AI generated song that Dave Googled in about 12 seconds. He said, make me an intro song that has dogs in it. This is like number 3 we chose. Or 300 really.
Where's the dogs?
We're talking about them.
There you go.
There you go. It's a work in progress.
I like that.
It's a work in progress.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
So yeah, we're back, gang, and we have a special guest today. You know what? We were talking before we started recording, and we didn't even talk about the bio or introduction. So instead of me going through and listing all the, that's another thing we'll get into. The dogs, types of things you trained them to do over the years, all the different dogs. But for our good people that may not recognize you from the social medias, you want to tell them who you are, Linda?
As you said, I'm Linda.
Yeah.
Nate's number 1 employee.
True story.
Yep.
That's all you got? Let's go with...
I'm the weird dog lady with 4 dogs.
Yeah. That's a good
The
lead.
weird dog lady
That's
with
a good
4 dogs.
That's a good lead in too, because you've got first off, let's talk about dogs. Let's go to, you got Gus, who's super working line
Bird dog.
right?
English pointer.
But you got that dog with really no intention of doing that work, right?
No, he was my 3rd pointer.
Yeah.
He was my 3rd pointer from the field trial world. Mm-hmm. He was the 3rd reject pointer from the field trial world I got. So for whatever reason, they didn't think he'd make it in a field trial. So because I had good experience in the past, they threw him on a horse trailer in Georgia and sent him up with somebody heading to a plantation in North Carolina, and I drove down and picked him up.
That's funny.
Not really.
Yeah, and then so I'll throw, as you mentioned your dogs, I'm gonna flash up a picture of them.
Okay.
There we go. So
I like that.
magical world of the internet, and then so we'll go in to Remy next. So Remy is a mutt that took you like a year to catch. Am I right on that one?
Saw her for the first time in March.
Okay.
And I was working at UPS at the time. I was on the package car with the driver. And she called me Jersey, and we went down this little alley street with a empty lot. And she said, Jersey, don't look. You're not going to like this. And there was Remy in the empty field with a little puppy. And I said, pull the truck over. And between her and I, we would go every day to try and earn her trust, give her more food. But she never took off running. So something told me this dog was worth the effort.
Right.
I didn't catch her till Labor Day after she had a second litter of puppies.
Oh, my goodness.
Took me 2 hours to find where she hid the puppies, which were probably just a couple days old, and 4 more hours to catch her.
What did you do with the puppies? I can't remember that part.
Animal control came and took her and the puppies, and within a few short days, somebody took the family home to foster them.
Okay.
She found homes for all the puppies and called me up and said, Remy's ready for you to pick her up.
Really?
And I went and picked her up, and I had 4 dogs at home at the time.
Because let's talk about, well, and you had the 2 Malinois we'll get into in a minute, but so you've had a lot of English pointers. You had Mastiffs.
Bull Mastiffs. English
Bulldogs, yep.
So at one time I had 3 Bull Mastiffs, an English Pointer that was deaf, a Bulldog, and a Belgian Malinois.
Right, yeah. So then how did Harley, your oldest Malinois, how did you come across her?
I came across her because I got my first one, Noelle, from a guy that breeds, imports, sells working dogs down in South Carolina.
Yep.
And he had reached out 9 years later, and Harley had an umbilical hernia. And he said,
which is pretty common. We see that, like, we've had a few people offer some in the last couple months.
In fact, he had another one, a shepherd.
That's right.
That offered.
That's right.
So initially I was like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went down there and saw her, and she...
It's like a little chainsaw running around.
She was talk about ping ponging off of every corner. I was like, time out. I can't give this dog what it needs. This dog is nuts.
Right.
So I left her at my friend's house and said I had just moved to Virginia. I didn't know if I could meet her needs. So I said, I'm the funny story is I said, I'm going to pass on her because I really was concerned that I could give her what I needed.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I got the phone call a month later about Gus. And for the longest time after that, every time she saw a picture of Gus, she's like, that doesn't look like a Malinois.
Yeah.
Because I took him and didn't take the Malinois.
Right.
But then I met you and met Dave, realized that there was opportunity there, that I would be able to meet her needs.
Right.
So when she was about a year old, I brought her home.
Okay, so you got her around 1.
Yeah.
So when was, I remember us doing bite work with Harley. How old was she then? She must have been pretty fresh then.
She was probably a year and a half.
Okay, so yeah.
She was young.
Yeah. And then, and your youngest Mally, actually youngest dog of all, right? Obviously, Z. You got her, Z's 6?
She's going to be 7 soon.
Going to be 7 soon.
Couple
But obviously,
weeks.
I remember got her as a puppy.
Yeah.
Like, groomed her. We got videos of her, like, tracking it, like, 12 weeks old.
10, 12 weeks
10,
old.
12
yeah.
weeks. So you have those 4. You're maxed out, right?
I never thought I'd be maxed out at 4 dogs, but I can tell you,
Well, that's a good
this grouping.
Yeah. Well, this is a good segue because Dave, he can't be here. He's his lovely bride had surgery, so he's
Hoping she's okay.
Yes, exactly, and she's doing fine. But it would be behoove him to stay home and take care of her than coming over here.
That's where he belongs.
And drinking beer with us. So, but he wanted me to ask, with your background, you're working dogs, you've got 2 Mallies, had one before, had Noelle, have trained deaf dogs before, so we'll get into that in a minute, how you did that, because you got to have a little nuance there, because if you never did one, your typical normal stuff doesn't work with a deaf dog, right?
Nope.
So you can't just say, hey, come, right?
No, and you got to make sure that charger is charged.
Yeah, so
that collar is charged.
give us, for those who might be listening and think, oh, those dogs are cool, Malinois, right? So we'll get into it in a minute, but you've done, dock diving, lure course, biathlons, bite work, tracking, detection, scent work, right? All this stuff with all these dogs. Primarily with the Malinois, right? I mean, Remy's more of like just road
Couch
dog,
potato.
house potato, yeah. Gus, you let him go and point the birds all day long, but don't purposely send him. He goes and does it naturally throughout the yard.
Absolutely.
But you do these pack hikes with all the dogs. Everyone's well trained as long as they have the recall and pretty much it down. Is all you really need for it's not like you're getting crazy with them together. But for the average person thinking, hey, I see those dogs flying around and climbing fences, what would you say to them? Because, it's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. You got to take your lifestyle, like you were talking about earlier, your lifestyle in account before you go and make that kind of a decision.
Absolutely.
Right. True.
I would say my life pretty much revolves around the dogs.
Yeah.
When I made the decision for all the dogs I had, every dog requires something different. Especially starting with Noelle being my first Malinois, I really had to learn what she needed. So I ended up, through the course of her letting me know she wasn't getting what she needed, and breaking out of her crate every day,
Right.
I found a retired police officer that was a canine officer back in New Jersey and knew I needed to give her a job. So not only did we do obedience, but we also did some, nothing structured and professional to sell her as a protection dog, but set up scenarios for protection work and bite work just to feed that need. Not to make her perfect or sellable, but so that she learned it right, she had a job to do. And believe it or not, starting that, and I probably maybe only did that once a month, all the breaking out of the crate went away. Immediately. So I learned through the process of elimination and her teaching me, I needed to meet her needs. So, that's really what I've learned with each dog. Gus, I hike him and he's not kind of walking in a pack. He's way out in the field doing his natural thing.
Right.
So he needs that.
Yep.
That's all he needs.
Exactly. I mean, realistically, a dog like that, you've got like a stellar recall on him. That's all that really matters, right? You turn him around, but let him go do his thing. Let him go, and you'll literally. I've been to your house where he's in your backyard, and he's just staring at a tree. Like, he could do that forever. But as long as when I say come, he turns and comes. Could really care less what that guy does, right?
I let him go so far out in the field.
Right.
There's been times when I call him back, and he's been so much in his own world out there, he has no idea where I'm at.
Right.
So he's kind of following the scent, going to where I was.
Right.
And I'm like, however far away from him, jumping up and down, waving my arm, over here, stupid.
He's running somewhere, yeah.
And he's like, where are you?
And the last thing he's doing is using this. He's just, the nose is just driving
He's just in his own world.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So, do you keep up with any of the people from, like that original group up in Jersey when you started the club up there? Cause I remember you showed me like some Noel pictures, like essentially the club, like I don't know if it was Schitzlin or what it was, or like that retired canine guy, but you ever talk to any of those guys up there? Or
I do keep in touch with him.
Yeah,
I do keep in
cool.
touch with him.
So, Harley, what brought you to, again, probably just giving her a job for the bite work? Because I remember decoying for her. We're teaching her on the sleeve. And not necessarily ever going to really use it in real world. It's just more of an outlet.
Yes.
Right? Same thing with tracking with Z. But she does, I mean, I would say, although all of it's an outlet, but like the biathlons, and it's all fun stuff, the dock diving. I mean, there's got to be some benefit to you as well. You know what I mean? Like, well, obviously biathlons keep you physical, right? Just keep you in shape. You got to run with the damn dog. But the dock diving, I mean, you do it pretty regularly, especially she's gearing up now.
To start the season
season's
again.
starting to warming up. I know you can go, technically year round if you had indoor heated pools and stuff, which I know Alice hooks you up over there sometimes with that if able. But there's got to be fun to go and do those events. Although the dog's getting more, probably 90%. I mean, it's fun for the human, right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, every dog is different. So I'm on my third Malinois, and every single one of them was very, very different. Different levels of what they needed, although similar, but very different.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years a lot more than what I knew before,
forever
moving forward, right? So I've learned a lot from you and Dave as well. So when I brought Xena home, I looked at it completely different. I had a blank slate, and I thought, I feel like I've created a monster too, by the way.
Yeah.
But I thought, what do I want to do with this dog? And it doesn't start when she hits 1 and we get past puppy stage. It starts right here and right now. And I remember you telling me, take her everywhere, let them kick you out. Well, I took that to heart.
Yes.
I also went on the Seeing Eye Dog website, and I printed their 100-point list.
Perfect.
What they have the puppies do, because, those puppies have to be environmentally sound.
Right.
Wherever they go.
Right.
So that was number 1 on my list. I wanted a dog that was environmentally sound. And I just took that blank slate and molded her. And the thing I learned about Z was she was willing to do anything. Like she doesn't stop and think before she does something. She just does it. And she will do anything I ask her. So she was a fantastic learning experience, throwing things at her, because I learned while she learned.
Right, yeah.
I've never trained a dog to track. So I thought that was
super cool.
Super cool. Yeah. And she took to it. So, and I just
also you did nail it. You had the green slate, which is kind of like our favorite for everything, right? So think about it with the board and trains. And this is no knock on anybody, because they're trying. Most people have thrown something at a dog, right? They're usually, they seek training. I mean, there's a good amount that like, hey, I'm planning to have a dog, and they've sought us out like early on stages. But for the most part, they're kind of at their wits' end, right? The dog is doing something, jumping, pulling, reacting, doing something. And then they'll come and bring us the dog, and they'll list all the things it knows, right? Right, you know what I mean? They'll fill out the form, and it knows sit and down and spin and all these. I was like, really? Does it really know these things? Because it wouldn't be here if you know. But the thing is that because the way they taught it has been kind of tainted, you almost have to erase all of it and start from scratch. And if I had anyone that had, I don't know, maybe a 6-month-old dog of any breed. I'd rather them just not do anything with it. Bring it here with no nuances on it, and we can do all that. But everyone, at least for a personal pet or any dog really, if they own it and it's 3 or 4 months old, they got a house, they're going to try something. They're going to try a recall. They're going to at least make it sit with a kibble. You know what I mean? So, but what a joy it is when you have like your own dog.
Yeah.
Like that's why we're always talking about getting these puppies and puppies and puppies. They're always coming left and right, and you do so much with them. But then, the market's so saturated with everyone having a pop-up working dog business these days. You know what I mean? So, but when it's your own dog, that's great. Gonzo was 9 months old, but, when they bring these dogs from Europe, the younger they are, the less time they have really. So he knew nothing.
Yeah.
And so when I went and looked at him, the guys that were with me during the testing, they were like, "What do you see this dog?" I was like, "Everything." They're like, "Well, it's never even seen a sleeve." I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know." I was so excited. I was like, I can actually introduce all this stuff correctly, opposed to, and lack of better terms, unfucking someone else's doing of a dog. So I think that's probably what made every year, every month, every day, we learn a little more about dogs. Like, don't you wish we knew this 20 years ago?
Yeah.
So like Z is probably like one of the kind of the future dogs, because he brought her up as a puppy and taught her all this stuff. And now here it is, getting ready to turn 7. You're like almost like, damn it, don't they wish they lived forever? And but the next one, you're going to know how to do these things even faster with the next one. It's pretty cool.
True.
But
let's not talk about the next one.
Yeah,
yet.
I know it. I know. That's how I felt when Macho was going out. And I was like, it's been all this work. This dog knows all this stuff, and I got to redo it all over again.
Oh, come on. There had to have been something in there that you had a bond with them, and
No,
you were kind of sad.
Oh no, absolutely. But also you have the body of work put into it. Like think about like a Z that does lure, dot diving, scent, does odor work, does tracking, all that. I mean, you remembered, and you did all of it, so you know how to do it again. But to really refine those things and get them good, and not only that, but just like your everyday stuff. Like this dog knows if I get in a car, I am to lay down, right? It knows that no matter where. That's going to take a couple months to do with the next dog all over again. You know what I mean? And we do it with every dog we have for training when we take them places. But
every dog's different too.
Absolutely, yeah.
When I got Gus, he couldn't ride in the car.
Yeah.
Foamed at the mouth. So there was all that work I had to put into it because he had to get over that. There was no accepting that he couldn't ride in the car.
Reminds me, think about how many dogs do we have for board and trains with this business that I would say probably 50% of them show up and the dogs can't ride in the car, or they threw up on the way over there, right? And you got to go right back to square one.
Or they're allowed to react to everything they see outside the window on the way.
That's a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go into that before we go into. Actually, you know what, Dave? What else did Dave? Dave couldn't be here, so this is a good one. This is a great one. We kind of already hit on it a little bit, but working lines, because you have 3 working line dogs. We'll say Remy. What would you call her? Would you even guess?
I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
People say maybe a pit bull mix, but she really is
awesome little mutt.
Yeah.
Awesome mutt. But so the other 3 though, pretty specific jobs they do are working line families. The average person without much time or skill on their hands probably shouldn't invest in those dogs. Would you agree?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. They're gonna eat your house up. They're gonna eat you up.
They have to find an outlet.
Even Gus, like he's gonna drive you crazy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta have an outlet.
They need a job to do.
Yeah.
They're bred for a job, different than it is. They're still bred to work.
Here's one thing that drives me crazy, and let's see if you agree. Right. So let's say someone has a high drive, high energy dog, right? So Malinois, GSP, whatever, and their outlet is tiring it out by throwing a ball.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And I think I
What are they really
made
doing?
that mistake.
What are they really
with
doing?
Xena in the beginning?
Okay.
The chuck it.
Okay.
I built that drive up, and I'm doing 2 things. The first thing I'm doing is just setting the bar too high that I'm never going to satisfy.
Creating like an endurance champion.
And the second thing I'm doing is I'm creating a madman that loses her shit every time she sees a ball.
Right.
So I stopped it altogether. Little here and there, maybe as a treat, but by no stretch of the imagination is it done on a weekly basis
Right.
anymore.
Yeah, because we have people that'll have a high energy dog, and let's even say fit athletic owner, right? And their theory is, well, in the morning I take it out and I chuck it, throw a tennis ball until the dog collapses. Essentially, I wear it out, and then when I get home from work, I take it on a 10-mile run. Like those kind of, and they think they're doing the perfect thing for this dog, right? They think so, and you can't really blame them when they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
But so you made the dog neurotic in the morning, right? And you probably ran a risk of a heat injury by collapsing chasing a tennis ball like Pepe. And then you get home and you got to work out. So good on you for running 10 miles. I guess I can't do it, but then you built this monster into an endurance champ. And then you go home and then he lays right down. I was like, he ain't gonna lay down for long.
No.
O'Malley's gonna lay down on a 10-mile run for about 3 minutes.
Yep.
And he's ready to go again.
Yep.
The problem is you're creating a monster. So when we say give them a job, we don't mean chase a ball and randomly return it or run next to you through the neighborhood for 10. Make it think about, can I go through this door, right? Do I have to sit before I eat? Can I react to anything? Doorbells, birds hitting the window, whatever it is. And we just neutralize all of that and make them mentally, right? So like you use the treadmill a lot, use for all your dogs, but you don't make them run on it.
Nope.
Right. You don't make that at a high speed anyway.
Nope.
Right. So give us your theory on the treadmill and slowing the dogs down. Because the average person gets on a treadmill
Thinks
to run.
it's to exercise.
Right. And dog ones, they're like, oh, that's great because when it's snowing and raining out, I don't have to go running with it. I make it run on right. So that's, in our opinion, definitely yours, not the reason they're created, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you do it at a slow speed, and it takes the mind that's going 100 miles an hour, and it slows it down because of the methodical walking forward.
Right.
So it puts the mind it's almost like a trance, because their forward motion is their most natural state.
Yep.
So they're walking on the treadmill. They have to focus to walk, just like a structured walk. And you're not really building endurance. They're doing a job to do mentally. And that's, unfortunately, people don't realize that. They don't, they get a dog and they think, oh, let me throw the ball for it and I'm doing my job to exercise it. But, what you don't know, you don't know. But people don't realize mentally is what the dogs need. And I've noticed that more and more with Xena. So take, for instance, a few sessions of doing the odor with her.
Yep.
I could literally see the change in her face and her behavior because she mentally worked.
Right. Like you can see them thinking.
Almost instantly.
Yeah.
She does 5 rounds of that odor. And then you can just see her almost like take a deep breath. Like she's so much more relaxed versus hiking her 4 miles.
She's going forever, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when she works and does those jobs of tracking or the gun odor or whatever paces I put her through for obedience, you can literally see a change in her demeanor, more so than taking her out and throwing the ball.
Yep.
And her coming in and she takes a break from the activity, but she's still ready to go.
Yeah, 100%.
So people don't realize the mental is
Right.
so much more important than the physical.
And you've done this before where you've done like the treadmill and you'll put like, let's say a high energy Mally on there and put them on there for 10 minutes and let them run at a high speed. And then turn off, the dog hops off, he's almost no different. But then you put it on for 10 minutes and make him go at 2 miles an hour. Right? And then the owner's there and the dog hops off and he walks. And they're like, well, that can't be more physically exhausting. It's not. But mentally.
10 minutes can make all the difference.
Right. It ran the body differently.
Yeah.
They got to think so much harder. So,
I had Z yesterday on 2 miles an hour for an hour.
yeah.
Did 2 miles.
There you go. Exactly.
And just the slow, methodical
Yeah.
walk. And mentally, she was tired. Her body probably could have gone 4 more hours.
Right. Yeah. What time? We already went over the personality. I mean, Dave asked. He threw some questions in there because he knew he couldn't be here. I guess we could have called him in. We could have conferenced him in.
conferenced
I know.
him in.
I think he's busy watching golf and carrying Joy whatever she needs right now. Hopefully, Joy.
Hopefully it's joy and not priority golf.
Hopefully he's home. Yeah. But the personality we already went over. The personality essentially needed for those types of dogs is someone to hold them accountable. In a nutshell.
I would say somebody that understands the breed
What the dog
and what
needs.
the breed needs.
Perfect.
And
yeah.
then be willing to make that a priority. You can't make yourself a priority and make the dog fit into what you want.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, everybody sees all these stupid videos.
Yeah.
Yes, the Malinois can do anything.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a unique breed that it really doesn't think before it does. Physically capable, built physically capable
Right.
to do just about anything.
No self-preservation.
No
Which
self-preservation.
might not be a good thing.
Which is not a good thing.
Yeah, sometimes,
I look at some of these videos where they're like going up walls
Right.
and in the air, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking that dog's gonna, hurt its back
right.
or something.
Yeah. Great for police work, but not good like
No, but people see that and they go, "Wow, that dog is cool." And I get that, believe it or not,
Right.
all the time when I'm out in
oh,
public.
I know it.
And part of it is because mine behave in public. They
Right.
don't look like a lunatic in
Right,
public.
yeah.
And everybody's like, "Oh, they're so cute," which we know they're not.
Right.
But they're like, "Oh, I've always wanted to get one." And the first word is
Don't.
touch.
Yeah.
And then, no, you don't want one.
Yes, exactly.
Because if you're not willing to give it what it needs, they can be demons.
Yeah, and that's the downside. Like when you're walking through like a Home Depot and you get 2 Malinois, they don't understand it's years of work right there. They look at it. I want that. Well, no, you don't. Actually, you
No.
don't.
Yeah, they don't know.
You don't have the time.
Yeah, they
or
don't
the
know
ability.
what
Yeah.
it took to get them
Right.
to that point.
Yeah, but we've had tons of those come through the doors, and I'm not going to sit here and knock owners or people that went out and bought dogs, but for the most part, most people don't take their lifestyle into account before they purchase a dog. Because we talked about this earlier before we started recording, but there's like lab people. And I still am pretty much. I mean, my 2 personal dogs, I got one left now, obviously, but I've always been labs, or lab-ish mixes growing up as a child. You know,
But from the outside looking in, your lifestyle fits lab
Right.
perfectly.
Go to the beach a lot, take it everywhere,
Yep.
good with kids, that kind of a thing. I say it all the time. Like my working dogs have been Malinois. I would not want one as a pet for just the liability. Of course, I do tons of aggressive stuff with them, but just for the liability. And I don't have near enough time to put in what is needed realistically. I mean, not many people. You have to plan trips around the dogs, you know what I mean? Like everything, it's, hey, I want to go somewhere. Well, this dog needs this much work. You have to kind of put them before you, at least at that breed.
Yeah.
It's not like it's, what was Clarence? You know how lazy Clarence? He's awesome though.
He was like a Dutch Shepherd Basset Hound.
Basset
mix.
Hound. Yeah, I thought
Yes.
the Basset Hound saved that dog. Yeah, that's what everyone needs. A Clarence.
A Clarence.
That's when you don't have time. Obviously.
He is by far the best.
Yeah. He was a cool dog. I mean, he just so low energy, but did all the obedience.
But also got the zoomies and got playful.
Yeah.
So he had a nice level of mix.
Yeah. So when Clarence, we trained him a few years ago. It's been several years now. Back then, I was talking to Dave about this the other day. I'll get your take on it because not many people realistically get to see as many dogs.
Hi, Pepe.
There's Pepe coming in.
Hi, Pepe.
Get to see as many dogs as we do, like a revolving door, just because we have a business, and they're just every week there's several being dropped off. But remember years ago, we would always, and we still do, have a checklist, and people would tell us, what drives them crazy about the dog, and it was always something obedience-wise. When you agree, like the dog won't come when I call it, right, or it pulls my arm on the walk. And the last, I don't know, and you can give me your thoughts on it as well. Maybe 3 years. I used to blame COVID, and I said this in the last podcast, but the reactivity is like it's like a landslide. I think it started with 1, 2 here. Now every single dog reacts to something, like whether it's on a leash or it's another dog or it's a car passing. What's up with the reactivity? What's going on with that?
Well, I think part of it is that they've never known how to properly correct a dog.
Right.
So when the dog does react to something, it gets away with it,
Right.
and it gets away with it, and it gets away with it. But
So basically, they're patterning reactivity as behavior.
right, and I think that there's 2 things. I think a lot of people put their dogs out in the yard and leave them there. So nobody's there to correct it when it's, fence fighting a dog next door
yeah.
or barking at people walking down the street.
Digging
and
a
the same,
hole,
Yep. Or
picking
the
up a
same
stick.
thing in the house. They're sitting at the window. They're barking at people going by, squirrels, dogs, whatever the case might be. And people holler at them or whatever, but it's kind of rewarding to
They're
the dog.
encouraging, right.
So the dog's pretty much getting away with it,
Right.
which then bleeds to the leash.
Yes.
And what do people also do? They excite them and say, oh, it's time to go for a walk. And
Right.
they build them up
Yeah.
and let the dog charge out the door. And now the dog is at the end of the leash.
Take all that energy
Ready?
outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good one because we had, I think most dogs that we've trained that were at least quoted as dog aggressive. A lot of them are misquoted as what's really going on with them, but almost all the ones that have been reactive of some sort, when we start digging in and ask them like what they do in the house, almost all of them are reacting in the house. But because it's inside, not that the owner knows how to correct it anyway, but there's no attempt there. And maybe they are outside. I mean, maybe outside they're giving like a little pop on a leash. Maybe they've even a lot of people have even came already with prongs, already tried an e-collar, improperly done it almost always. I mean, always. I don't think anyone's really done it correctly ever, which is what we exist for. No big deal. But none of them have ever mentioned correcting anything inside, though. Do you know what I mean?
Very true.
Have you ever thought about like, hey, owner, so this dog sees another dog walk by or a squirrel or whatever. He jumps up on the window or barks, doorbell. But none of them ever use those tools indoors. Mm-hmm. And then they expect them to work outside where it's like tenfold. Right?
You don't know what you don't know, though. They're
Yeah.
not saying or seeing that this behavior is a direct result of what they're doing on the leash outside.
Right.
They're not seeing that correlation.
Right.
They think it's funny if the dog is barking at a squirrel or barking at people outside or barking at the mailman. And that's, a lot of people don't understand that certain behaviors bleed into other behaviors.
Right.
They don't
Right.
kind of look at the dog in that way
Yeah.
and understand that. It's like with puppies, right? What's the first thing you do when you go visit puppies at a breeder? Everybody's hanging over the little pen and the puppy's up on his hind legs and getting all this high-pitched, oh, look how
Right.
cute, loving. Right there, you're teaching the dog, I get rewarded when I'm on my hind legs.
Right.
And you don't realize how right there the pattern starts.
Yeah, they literally come from the factory
Yes.
already jumping up.
Yes.
Right? And why do they do that? Because a human taught them to do it.
Yes.
Like literally at 2 days old or whatever,
Yes.
right? So talking about the dogs that we see, I will go back to me being a lab person from birth. It seems like they were like the most prevalent, and they were the most
They were.
popular dog.
They were.
Right. So now French Bulldog. It's
Ugh.
kind of taken over, and we get enough Frenchies. But by far, German Shepherds, I would say, if we had to go back and look at them, but I would say probably German Shepherds are still number one.
Yep.
But the Doodles are a close number two. And when I say Doodles, I'm saying like
Any kind of doodle.
Right, right. Anything with like
All shapes, sizes,
right,
and colors.
Bernedoodle, Labradoodle. But the Doodles have really taken off in the last 3-4 years, you'd say. I mean,
I would say at least.
right around there.
Yeah.
I know you can't see the future, explain why, but why is there an influx, do you think, of that breed? I mean, because it seems like every phone call I get, it's
a doodle.
a doodle if it's not a shepherd. And if they'll throw something else every now and then, but lots and lots of doodle mixes. Is it the mentality of these dogs? I don't think it's for their workability. It's got to be for
What workability?
Yeah,
What
exactly.
workability
Yeah.
does a doodle have?
I would say most
Hypoallergenic. I think that
and looks.
drives,
The two
and the
things.
looks
Yeah.
are the two things.
Gotta be.
And I think they're probably absolutely adorable as puppies, which most puppies are. Fluffy,
There you
cute.
go. There you go.
And then you add that to they think is hypoallergenic. It's not going to shed. But nobody ever looks at what are the personality traits? What are the needs of this type of doodle?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're getting it because of those two things. But is this dog going to meet my lifestyle?
Right. Well, and think about it. It's not; those aren't the type of dogs that are getting rescued either. Like they're not in shelters. You're not seeing doodle mixes getting rescued. It's not a
No.
pit mix. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Those are puppies, typically, like you just said, and they're fluffy and cute. But almost every doodle they mouth a lot, right?
Anxious.
They're anxious.
Anxiety,
Yeah.
yep.
And
Separation anxiety.
And big time.
Big time.
Big time.
That's a big time
Now,
one.
again, everything we're
Codependent.
Yes. And everything we're describing is human put on emotion,
Yes.
right? It's created. Now, we're not sitting here knocking doodles. Like, we can go and get like an 8-week-old doodle right now and have none of those problems because we wouldn't coddle it to doing those things, right? But
And we have seen a couple good ones, but
absolutely,
every dog is different. Every owner is different.
yeah,
But for the most part, it seems like the majority of the doodles have been coddled, not held accountable,
right,
created, whether it's a single person with it and it's filling a gap. So,
Right.
it
A lot of that.
Yep. A lot of that. So as it gets older, now it becomes like a fear biter when somebody comes to the house type of thing.
Yep.
Separation anxiety.
or even protective over the owner. We've seen some of
Yes,
those, which is
yes.
kind of I should say rare. There's nothing rare anymore for anything, but you don't see that a lot in that breed. And you might as well erase the concept of them being in a crate. Because almost none of those doodle owners
Want to use a crate.
oh no, because they want that thing in the bed.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is like the worst thing ever.
And that's got to be it. It's just they're so cute and fluffy. They baby them. They put all that baby. And, I've told you this before. When I tried something different with Xena, I did not have her sleep on me. I didn't have her sleep on the sofa with me. I wanted that dog to be able to be in a crate. And she was almost 5 months old before she actually came in the house to be in the house. I mean, she slept in a crate in the bedroom to potty train her. So I never coddled her as a puppy. I met her needs first, boundaries, structure, routine, all that stuff.
Right.
So that she earned the right to come into the house when I felt like she's graduated to that point. But it was a good example to show that if you meet the dog's needs first and you don't put the human affection in first, you put the dog's needs first, that you get much more of a stable kind of dog.
100%, yeah.
That's not, a lunatic being left alone
Right.
and so on and so forth. Huge revelation there to see that a puppy can thrive without affection.
Right, yeah.
And then be the companion dog for the next 12, 15 years because you gave up that affection for 3-4 short months.
Right, yeah. And by no means, the breed has nothing to do with it. We're just mentioning the ones we see more often.
Right.
And people are probably picking them because of looks and things like that. Because we've had, like Nikki Michaela, who had a doodle.
Bernedoodle.
Yeah, awesome owners, worked that dog, and that dog has none of these problems and lives in like, what, a 200 square, maybe 100
camper,
square? Yeah.
traveling all around,
Yeah,
living
all
in
around.
a camper,
Yeah.
not barking when they're
Yeah,
gone.
yeah. But they do the work with the dog.
Yes,
you
they
know?
still do the work
They
with the
do the
dog.
work with it, so they don't have these problems, and they don't. They hold it accountable, right? They don't make excuses for the dog. So I mean, you can insert that to any breed. I just feel like we're seeing. Think about it, like 20 years ago, we were the nation of the Labrador, and then the Golden Retriever, and then the German Shepherd, kind of in that order, right?
Yeah.
We're still seeing the German Shepherds, but now, if we have, let's play a percentage game.
Well, think about it. How many labs have we done? 3, maybe? Recently?
Probably, yeah, this year.
I mean, when you
but
think
yeah.
about it,
yeah,
you know,
you just don't get
you
them.
don't see the labs.
And it's
a ton of shepherds, can't count the shepherds.
But it's funny. It makes you think. Are you not seeing the labs because owner mentality? They don't have maybe breeding. Maybe the people who already buy a lab, because we talked about this before. Like, if you're getting a lab, you're kind of probably already a dog person.
I would think.
You know what I mean? The German Shepherds are still, a metric shit ton of those coming through, but almost. Talking about numbers, we just said 3. We've had a gazillion of those. Probably 3 didn't have reactivity, right? German Shepherds did not have it. The rest were all anxious, whining, reactive
we'd
messes.
be lucky if we had 3.
Yeah.
That weren't. Yeah, a lot of them. We did have a couple that did not have the tendencies that we've seen with all the others.
The pacing and stuff like that.
The whining, the
yeah.
anxious, the reactivity. you know, that one that we had that had just been rescued, surprisingly, was just
Yeah,
rescued, was
yeah.
off the street, knew
Yeah.
nothing about it.
That was really rare.
Totally calm, balanced, relaxed, no whining, no nothing.
They lucked out on that one. Yeah, big time.
and
then
not-
we've
and
had
knowing nothing about its past.
right, and then we have others that have been like literally just off the plane from Europe and paid God knows what, and you can't even get that dog to like look at you. You know, it's just so out of
Or be quiet in the kennel.
spacey, yeah, or chasing reflections. You know, but again, also a lot of that stuff, depending on when you got the dog and how much was done to it before, you know, a lot of it was coerced by owners not realizing it or thought it was funny to like make a dog chase, you know, a laser or whatever, and that bleeds over into a neurotic mentality.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I had to go and look at stats about dogs that came as puppies, opposed to people that have rescued them, opposed to the breed and why. I mean, I think on the forum that I have asked people why they got the dog, I think, and a lot of them are, you know, always want. There's a good amount of people as their first dog, and they're like in their 50s and 60s, and they're buying their first
Right.
animal. You know,
That's not a bad age.
Yeah.
Watch that.
not that there's anything wrong with being 50 or 60.
Yeah. Let's make that clear.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the German Shepherd, the Frenchies, tons of French bulldogs. They just took over, right? Didn't they
I
win
think they did
last
get the
year?
number one.
Number one
And
spot.
they're great little dogs. Just, I would.
Medical nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. Those brachial type dogs that.
Training
smush
wise, yeah,
faces.
training wise, they're awesome. Like we
Yeah,
always,
love to work.
they're
Love to work.
they're great obedience wise. We're always just so worried about can this thing breathe? You know.
Like you're afraid to take it for a walk when the weather's warm.
But yeah, man, their healing comes at stay. I mean, they're nailing it. But
They love to
right,
work.
exactly.
Love
but
to
July, you're not walking that dog very far.
No.
Ain't happening.
No.
What else got going on? So, you got a trip coming up eventually soon.
I do have a trip.
You
coming
jumping over
up,
to going to Europe again?
going across the pond.
Dog selecting and getting tattoos.
Exactly.
That's all you do when you go over there. You play with dogs and get tatted up.
Exactly. You know, it's a shame I can do that right here in the state, but instead I'm going to jump the pond. And
Yeah,
do
there
it.
you go. Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about your most recent trip?
Oh,
You were
it's-
the one that played with dogs. Tell me about the
you
sled
know what?
dogs.
I had an opportunity. That was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did 6 states in like 7 days, I think it was. But yeah, while we were out and we really lucked out into it, honestly. Like I'd love to
I
say
think so.
I'd love to say I went out there for that, but in Wyoming, we went dog sledding, and it was the last day of their
would
season.
kill
Like
for
literally, they had trucks loaded up, like these trailers, and they were taking all 160 dogs. Had 160, all Alaskan Huskies, and they were taking them to Juneau.
Alaska.
How do you say that? I'm butchering it.
No, you're doing just fine.
Juneau. Juneau.
Juneau?
Juneau.
Juneau?
Juneau, Alaska.
Juneau?
Yeah, they're all going. we'll,
Someplace in Alaska.
We'll put the correct spelling right here.
Someplace in Alaska.
But they were Juneau. Let's just
Juneau.
go with it.
We'll
Yeah.
go with it.
Never been to Alaska. I don't know. But they were because
Next trip.
they can run it. And what was weird was they had in Wyoming where we're at, there was at least 3, maybe 4 foot of snow on the ground still, right? And this is the last day of the year. And it was about 42 degrees maybe. And the guide that was telling me that the reason they're leaving is weather. It's getting too warm. He said, this is not only the last day, but you guys are the last run of the last day. Like we get the last
Last
trip
open spot.
in Wyoming. And he was like, in Alaska, we can go to Juneau, I think, and run all summer because it doesn't get below. But it was funny. 40 to 45 is just hot for those dogs. Obviously, we did like a 10-mile loop. He would stop here and there and like give them like a break and everything. It was awesome. Like I said, 160 of them, all load them up. So that was really cool. The 2 lead dogs, and both mine and my mom and the kids were on a different sled. Both those dogs were retired Iditarod dogs, so they had done the whole thing before.
Oh, wow.
And they were both like 10, 11, 12 years old. And then behind them, the dogs were like 8, and then pairs of 6s. And they got younger as they went back. I guess it's based on their pulling and all that. A lot of them were siblings. And it was so cool because like in our run of like 12 dogs, the 2 up front were like the senior leaders, right? And then there was at least 2 or 3 sets of brothers, and they were going after each other the entire time. And I'm like, look at the guy. I'm like, dude, like you must have like dog fights like crazy out here. I'm like, what do you do with? You're going along this trail, and we're like in the middle of BF Wyoming, right? There's nothing around, and he comes across like a snowmobile or something like that. I was like, what happens when you come across another person like walking a dog, and that dog's like dog aggressive, and you got 12? He said, happens all the time. He said, and these dogs are pack animals. He said, so when one dog gets in a fight, 12 get into a fight.
So
and I'm
instead of focusing on what they're doing, they actually react to the dog.
He said they will ignore unless like a dog like it's very rare, but unless the dog like comes and like will attack one mid
gets within their bubble,
right? Because you got some random owner walking God knows what dog, and they don't have control of it off lead. If it gets into that line and like nails
it's
one
close
of them,
enough, they're gonna
right. Go. So I wouldn't.
And
say,
then the whole sled goes, the whole team goes.
That's what, yeah, exactly.
It's pack mentality.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. I was like, I guess luckily you don't see like people hiking in 4-foot snow with a dog, but you know, animals. Like he said, they came across a moose the other day.
Really?
And he was like, he's yelling out the commands like, please don't fuck with this moose. Because you imagine 12 dogs jumping on this moose. And then you have like...
And he's on the cart in the back like a kite flying behind while they're...
And then you have like whoever is on the sled, like some family or whatever, like they're getting taken for a ride, you know, so super dangerous. I was also I had a couple of handlers from, I won't say the state because they didn't want me to, but they saw I was out there and asked me to do some problem solving with their dogs while I was out there. So cool. I was like, there's a lot of... I don't know what it is. There's a lot of like trainers across the United States that are keeping their training groups, their departments, whatever, almost handicapped because they want them to think they have all the knowledge. I don't know what that is. I've been seeing that a lot lately.
Really?
Like I went to that class up in like Northern Virginia, and like Michael Lorraine was up teaching, and there's a few people there that weren't allowed to bring their dogs, but they can come video it and then take it back to their trainer to see if it's something they want to implement. The only thing I can think of is like that trainer's got him held hostage by his ego. Like he wants to be the one that knows. It's the craziest thing because those guys,
crazy.
Yeah, they just happened. I put like a post of me like in Idaho or something on my Facebook or Instagram, and they saw that, and it was some guys that we had met from Nashville.
Okay.
That when we did Nashville, then a few guys came up like in a bar afterwards. They asked a question, kind of the same concept, and like. Knowledge is free.
Networking,
yeah.
It's networking.
It's free, and they asked me like, "Hey, I know you're on vacation. Is there any way you can take a look?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." It's like, bring the dog to the hotel. We'll do it right here, right? So, but don't tell anybody I contacted you, kind of a thing, because they don't want me to mention like what department or state even they're in, because they don't want their trainer getting back that they're seeking outside. And what they were told was absolutely wrong, right? There's a much better way of doing whatever it is, but that's the craziest thing.
That is crazy.
But the only reason I can think of it is like my retraining group, I tell every single one of them, whether it's a canine handler or even like you, I'm like, hey, go look at this video, listen to this guy, go train.
You do that all the time?
All the time, right? And that's the way it should be. But the fact those guys kind of reached out like almost in like secrecy really makes you feel bad for him, because I'm like, dude, this guy's got no idea what he's doing. He's trying to prevent you from having outside knowledge.
Well, I mean, the goal should be that you can do the best that you can for the working dog, because a working dog is working for the department.
Right. Yeah.
And to keep the public, you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you want to learn as much as possible?
And you get no extra. Like I tell us, like Garrett, who's probably coming up through the ranks to be a trainer soon, and I said, you get no extra for me being a master trainer and certifying dogs. I get no extra money. Like there's no benefit of Nathan Kelly whatsoever, other than passing on free knowledge. That's the way it should be. But so I don't know. Maybe there's departments out there where it's a paid position or something, and it's coveted. I don't know, but
I don't know. It seems kind of
very strange.
Stupid.
Very strange. Yeah.
You know, why would you be held back from learning what not to do? Learning what to do, trying something different. How are you going to know if it works unless you try it? You know what I mean? Like there's so much knowledge.
In the law enforcement community, there's definitely a lot of that. That's the way we've always done it mentality, which I say all the time is like the most dangerous words in law enforcement, because that doesn't make it right. And we've learned so much in the last year, let alone the last 30. And there's still people out there doing detection like simultaneous ways, and other than like doing it delayed or multiple markers or operant conditioning, they just don't understand those concepts because they don't understand it. They don't want to know anyone else going out and doing it. You know what I mean? And I think it's more of a, you're not going to show me up. I'm the trainer.
Well,
based on what the guys were explaining to me, like, how dare you question this person's like authority almost, which is asinine.
You can't know more than I know.
Nailed it, yeah. Which is asinine, which is absolutely ridiculous.
It is, and think about it. Everything changes. There was a time we didn't have cell phones. Think about what the cell phones looked like when we first got them, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's learning something new and expanding on the product that they have to make it better and better and better better.
Think about scent work. Like we changed, when we're doing like Z on odor, we would do simultaneous, and now we're both like, I like the delayed conditioning a little better, or I like indirect rewarding here instead of on top. And we go back and forth, dog related, scent related, depends on what you're really doing. Even tracking. Yep. Like when I first started tracking, we weren't using the pump sprayer or hard surface, but we did Z that way. And the dogs like nailed it at like 10 weeks old.
It was crazy.
Yeah. And we're like, man, that's a better method. But you just didn't know what you don't know,
So when you train a working dog, you don't start on the hard surface first?
It depends. So what the last school I did one dog on hard surface. One dog we did food rewarding, like dragging like cheesecloth, like steak and juice and stuff, because it was a dog that had been to 2 schools and couldn't track, allegedly. We turned it into a tracking machine. And then my dog, I started out with the hard surface sprayer, but I noticed when we got into vegetation, he almost acted like he didn't know what he was doing with it. So I went back and did square boxes, made him hunt for food inside the box, hunt out. So all 3 dogs tracked a different way, But
my point exactly. Right. So no dog is the same.
Right.
No process is the same.
Yeah.
So the more you learn, the more you know, the more you can adapt to what works differently for each dog.
Yeah.
So that's why going back to not being willing to talk to other trainers and learn new things, how can you adapt to what works best for each individual dog?
Yeah, exactly. And that's also the downside.
You walked right into that. By
I know. And I also taught the same thing applies to going back to law enforcement canine handlers, the same thing. Like I told Dave this the last podcast, I think. If you get a dog and you're like a green handler, first you're a police officer. Right, so yes, they're all going to say I always want a canine, right? But really, you start as a cop. You had to work the road first, and this and that. You go through a school, you train your dog. A trainer shows you how to do it, and if you're lucky, you might have that dog for 8-9 years working, right?
If you're lucky,
yeah. And then you get another one, and then you might run a 20-year career and only have trained 2 dogs in your life. Really, 2 dogs. Opposed to 30, 40, 50 through like a board and train year. So you may not be training them on, and that's why I say this all the time, like I take way more knowledge from the private sector and take it into law enforcement than you ever do the opposite. Because the average handler has a dog or 2 or 3 or maybe 4 if you've been there for like 30 years or something. One didn't get shot or killed or stabbed or something crazy, a cancer. But even then, you're only doing 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 dogs. You're not doing like 50 in a calendar year of every breed and age. So that's where the knowledge really comes, because the dogs we're seeing at a business, they don't have drives a lot of times. You know what I mean? We got to make them work, right? So we do some tactical fasting, or we'll do some pressures to make them work, or fun games, whatever it is. Everyone asks me like, hey, if you're going to teach a dog to recall, which is, you'll get a kick out of this. Like, my dog won't come. Hey, what do you do at your business? How do you make him come? I said, well, it depends on the dog. I said, don't you have like a blueprint? Like you always do the exact same. I was like, not really. No. I mean, we kind of have a system down, right? Essentially, come is a positive thing. So come this way, you get positive things happening, right? But you got to get there. You know, you got to do it in a no stimulated environment, and then slowly up
You
it.
got
and
to
then,
create the space
and then-
first.
yeah, right,
How
exactly.
many dogs do we have that won't leave our side?
yeah, exactly.
So you got to think outside the box and think, okay, what can I do? Every dog is different.
And
so
no-
you're thinking,
And what they really struggle with is I think they forget like the training starts before the training starts. You know what I mean? Like before we even do anything, we've got to charge and create a marker. Like you can't just look at a dog and say yes. Like, oh, I noticed you're saying yes. Does that mean you did a good job? That doesn't mean shit until I make it mean something. You know what I mean? You could spend a day just getting eye contact. You have, right?
Yeah.
You spent 3 hours with a dog before he'll look at you sometimes. And you capture that moment, mark it, and you create a behavior. A lot of people don't understand that concept of like the operant conditioning and markers and rewarding behaviors. And you create a behavior, you mark something, and it doesn't matter if it takes 2 minutes to get the food out, right? He's getting rewarded for what you just marked verbally. And that's a
kind
lot
of like clicker.
the-
People use clicker.
Yep.
We say yes.
That concept is hard for a lot of cops, though. It's really
Really?
difficult. Yeah, I think they live in that simultaneous world always. They don't understand the concept. Yeah, like we can click or say yes or whatever word you want. Boom, he's rewarded for it. Then he gets paid for it, and they'll think, well, if you didn't give him his ball or his food within 1.5 seconds, does he really understand? I was like, oh my god, dude. Yes, he understands it. We have to have like just a marker class in general, you know. But that concept is really rare in law enforcement community. I would say you see that is much more a pet industry working term, and then we see like your dog like Gonzo or like a Z come out and do something, and they think we must be Johnny on the spot with a toy. Oh, we rarely get these dogs a fucking toy. Rarely. I mean, no, they're doing it because we've patterned the behavior. That gets you paid. That gets you corrected. Don't do that. So they rarely do the don't do that things. But, if you go and, do a track or do some obedience with one of your dogs and they're like looking at it like, man, you must be so quick with pay. I'm like, no. In fact, a lot of times I'll say you'll stare at them and they got to give you eye contact for a minute and then you get something. But that concept is really lost.
Really?
And yeah, it really is. Yeah. It's strange.
That is weird.
And I think it's more of I don't know if you just need more patience or more time with dogs, and maybe they don't get that ability because they've got a school's going on. You got like 12 weeks to turn around a fully street-ready dog, so maybe they kind of skip over it and they go straight to, banging them with a prong or e-collar, making them do something. Like I see it all the time. Like dog won't out, put an e-collar on it. So it's letting go because something hurts. That's not outing.
Yeah.
It's not outing. You know what I mean? Mark the positive
Yes.
behavior, and you can make a dog out in an hour easily without tools.
And the eye contact too. I mean, especially a dog that's got a high drive.
Yeah.
Especially one that's got high intelligence, like say a working dog. Doesn't take long for them to 1 + 1 = 2.
Right.
As soon as I look up at you, I get yes, and after I hear
Yeah.
yes, at some point I'm going to be paid. You do that 3, 4, 5 times in a row, they pretty much caught on. Now you just got to build on it.
Yeah. And they like figuring stuff out.
Yes.
They like working it.
Yes.
But I think, I don't know. I really don't know. I guess I'd have to, maybe other than asking the trainers that are running those schools that are doing it that way, hey, why are you doing
Why?
that?
Yeah.
But I would say 99% of the time, that marker, operant condition, that kind of stuff would be foreign to them. Just like the detection. The concept of rewarding away from a box or a sentinel or whatever it is, awarding away from, everyone would think, well, the dog will be more likely to turn and come away from it or look back at you. It's actually the exact opposite. Like they stare at it even more because they haven't been released because you marked the indication, which is, I think, a lot to take in for some people that aren't really, I don't know.
But that goes back to the theory of expanding your circle of learning different things. And every dog is going to benefit differently from different ways you go about it.
Right.
So why not open yourself up to take more of information in to see what works?
Yeah. Well,
And that works for personal pets and canines too. Every dog is an individual. So you might do the same thing with every dog, but it might take longer with a different dog. You might get a better response when you use a toy as a reward, food as a reward, verbal as a reward. everything's different, but why wouldn't you learn different ways to go about it to achieve your final goal?
Yeah.
Because it's not just one way.
I think it comes down to you just saying that makes me think just experience maybe, because think about that. Like most dogs will do most anything for food, right? Especially if you do some what we call tactical fasting, right? But there's times where that doesn't work, right? And then let's say dogs have no toy drive. I don't think there's a drive for toys, but people call it that. Or they have no desire for the affection, right? So the praise.
And we've seen that all that.
Yeah, because we've seen those, right? So what happens, you tell the average person, I want a dog, come back to me. But he won't eat. And we'd say, oh, every dog. Well, we've had dogs that will not eat. I'll tell you that. We've had dogs that will not eat. And you're talking about day 3, 4, no food strike, right? So you got to get creative. And then people have paid you all this money. You got to try on a product. You can't send it home. You make it work. But until you've seen that, this dog won't chase a ball, a flirt pole, toy. Doesn't want to come to you, all the praise and love in the world, right? So you got to make these things work. And the average person hasn't had that, because if they had that dog, they'd turn that dog in. They wouldn't adopt that dog to begin with, right? They go to the animal shelter probably with a Kong or food to test them. But until you've seen those, right, and we'll test those dogs, or we'll evaluate them, and we're like, man, it's not going to be a food-driven dog. I doesn't really care for a toy. And the guy's like, but, I'm going out of town next week, and here's money, make it work, right? And you got to shit and make it work. Well, you come up with tactics to make it work. But the average person not seeing that. No. They're not getting, there's no way they're getting that experience. No. I think there's the problem, right? So
you're forced to think outside of the box.
You got to.
More often when you have the rotation of multiple dogs than you do if you're only seeing 1, 2, 3 dogs.
Yeah, ever. And then think about something as simple as a down. Remember the one dog we've had several.
I will never ever forget that I was beside myself.
Yeah.
That I could not make that shepherd down.
And all the things
nothing worked.
Yeah.
And you could have put an elephant on his back. No. On his shoulders. He was not downing.
Nope.
And I was like, Nate, I can't get this dog down.
Yeah.
All the basics, right? So you, with your experience, said, don't worry about it. I got this.
Yeah. But it was still, it took some ingenuity. Some ingenuity.
I was blown away with what you came up with.
I had to literally build a bridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then build from that, right? Because then he was willing to down, but if I said down, he would go over there and go under your bridge.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I had to find a way to get him to down close to it.
Yeah.
Then
and the food reward wasn't much to even lure him there.
No,
but
it wasn't.
But until you see the hundreds of dogs, people don't see that kind of stuff. And that's where all the knowledge is, and that's where you should share that.
Yes.
So if someone comes up to you in a Home Depot and is like, other than if they're fanboying over the breed, different story. And you've obviously got no reason or no recourse of telling them the F off, right? No, it's my dog, don't touch it. But if they're hey, and asking you a training tip, you'll 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's different than, hey, that's a pretty dog. Can I touch it? No. Because I don't want to encourage my dog that other people mean blah, blah, blah. But they're like, hey, how did you get it to do this? Then it's a whole different world. Then
Absolutely.
Now I'll acknowledge this person and give them my time of day.
Yeah.
Because I will 100% share the information all day long.
All day long.
Right. But it's kind of just depends on... And most people that approach you and we're doing dog training in public, they're either doing one or two things. They either want to it's never how you're doing it. It's oh, those dogs are so cool. Can I pet it? Or get a photo with it? We've seen that a lot. Or they're asking us to leave because we're pushing the envelope of where we're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Which is my favorite part. Linda's are you sure? I was fuck, the worst they can do is tell us to leave,
I've never been asked to leave anywhere.
Really?
No. Zena's been in Walmart, shoe stores, clothing stores, bookstores, the eye doctor. You said the airport had you leave. I never tested the airport theory.
I got kicked out of a few places.
Never been asked to leave.
I've been asked to leave a few places, but it's been pushing it, It's usually like some secure place I shouldn't be with a dog.
Well, there you go.
But, what What else we got, Linda?
Well, didn't Dave have a question? Look at Dave's questions.
Okay. Oh, here's a good one. I think Dave, he's trying to shout himself out without being here. What? Ask Linda what got her into bite work.
Well, that's funny because that's a good question.
But didn't you do bite work with Noelle?
Yes.
There you go.
That's a good
See,
question.
Dave, you weren't the first one. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Dave, you weren't the first one. Best maybe, but not the first. So that's a good question because I did bite work with Noelle because Belgian Malinois, she's breaking out of her cage. What do? Did it with Harley. And then I learned a lot over the course of their time with you and Dave. And I learned tracking we did with Xena as soon as I brought her home.
Yep.
Right? And I learned just because she's a Belgian Malinois, she doesn't have to bite.
100%, yeah.
And I liked that.
Yep.
And every time people say to me, well, does she do bite work? Well, no.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to do bite work. She can do another job. And tracking, she really did well and liked it. And it was something new for me to learn. So the bite work was a misconception of mine initially as I learned and got into the working dogs that because they're Belgian Malinois, they have to learn to bite. Quite frankly, Xena will do it.
Yeah.
Naturally.
But what's the point?
But I'm really glad that I never expanded on the bite with her. So, just because they're a Belgian Malinois does not mean they have to bite. So let's get that out there because I get that all the time.
Yeah. And we got tons of we got tons of drug dogs and bomb dogs that's zero bite work, single purpose. And it's really, again, unless
it's a job.
Yeah. Unless you're doing it for like a law enforcement capacity, you're putting yourself in a big liability. Because let's say you got Z and Harley out at the Home Depot, right? And you're walking around and somebody does something stupid. Like we've seen these people that are like lawsuit shopping. They try to flank your dog when they walk by or get real close, grab the tail, and they try to turn and snap. And if like a dog like Harley turned and bit that person and they sued you, they're going to bring up, well, wasn't that dog trained to actually apprehend the person? And they're going to find it somehow. They're probably like a subpoena my phone or something.
But it could be something else. What if somebody trips?
They'll find a video of me decoying that dog 20 years ago. You know what I mean? They'll do it. That's how they do it.
And the other thing is what if somebody like bumps into me? Right?
And they perceive that as the handler being attacked.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's a great outlet to do, but think outside the box to other outlets because it's all about a working dog that needs a job.
Especially when you take your dog everywhere, like people should.
Yeah.
You should have your dog neutral to all environments, and that's one of the biggest. I mean, I won't get off into a dog park rant because everyone knows if I could go back in time and find the person that created the dog park. There wouldn't be dog parks.
That and e-collars in the stores.
Yeah. Oh
online.
My God, yes. I wish the e-collars were regulated like firearms.
Yes.
And you had to go through training to get it done. Prong collars the same way. Which we train all dogs on them, but we do it the proper way.
Yes.
And we have a good amount of people that bring us like the Amazon e-collars or whatever. It's one of those things that you're trying.
Well, they get to the point that they can't stand a behavior.
Right.
So they buy it online, they put it on the dog, they crank it up, and they hit the button, and the dog has no idea what that means.
Yep.
So
where it's coming from, why is this happening to me, how do I turn it off?
Not working.
No.
You have to condition it. So what else did Dave have to say?
We talked about earlier, he had the personalities of a working line dog owner, like why that shouldn't be purchased as a
nobody
pet.
should. And I'm not even saying I should be. I just adapted to what I ended up having in my lap. I didn't go out and buy these dogs. They just kind of were available.
Yeah.
And I learned to appreciate them and love them. So that's how I ended up on 3.
Here's Dave's first question to you. What started your love of working line dogs?
That's the one I was
working line dogs.
So there's nothing better, and you said it with the sled dogs, there's nothing better for me to see a dog work. I have loved that for as far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
To watch a dog thrive at something it was meant to do.
There you go, yeah.
Just gets me going. I just love to see a dog work. So whether it's on horseback at a field trial, watching a pointer do that, watching the police dogs work, whatever a dog is doing when it comes to a job or work, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So tell me, before we go, I wanted to go back to, you had a deaf dog.
Yes. English pointer.
Yeah. So how give me the history of that. Like, how did you even determine the dog was deaf? Did you know it as soon as you got it?
Well,
Do you think it was hard headed because the dog wouldn't? And
Well-
how did you get it to? I mean, because you had a beautiful obedience on it, but you had to learn how to do that.
Yes. So, to make a long story short, a friend of mine's husband trains bird dogs before he passed. He
Okay.
trained bird dogs. So, he was in the field trial world, you have the owner, the handler, and a scout. So,
Okay.
in a field trial, the dog's running for 2 hours. It gets judged on pointing birds.
Got it.
Then they flush out the bird.
Got it.
Stone. So you can't use e-collars to communicate with the dogs on horseback. So when this dog was born deaf, and in that field they have a tendency of breeding the English pointer for the all white because they can see it easier when it's out in the field.
Interesting. Okay.
But a dog that has a base coat of all white, that the base coat of white, like a Dalmatian, Bulldog, Great Dane, when it comes predominantly white or all white, the genes that cause that causes partial or total hearing loss. They don't know why, but they see a pattern in a base coat of white dogs. So they tend to see that a lot in the field trial world because they have a tendency of trying to produce that. So this dog was deaf, and my friend called me up and said, I have a deaf pointer for you. And I said, well, I live in a condo that doesn't allow dogs. And she said, well, let me repeat myself. I have a deaf pointer for you. And she was coming up to New Jersey to do a veterinary conference, and I picked her up at the airport. She handed me my poop and pee covered pointer that just flew in a crate and said, here you go.
Yeah.
Here's your pointer puppy. So I then had to move for this puppy, and then I had to learn how and what to do with a deaf bird dog.
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction many years ago on the e-collar. Was I went to a trainer to learn how to use an e-collar to communicate. And you know, I had bought a book, 50 commands for a deaf dog, and I thought, I'm not, this dog doesn't have to speak a story to me.
Right.
It needs to come when I call it. It needs to sit down, stay, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, she taught me how to use the e-collar with the long leash, hit the button, pull the dog comes to me, I praise it. So every time it felt it, it knew to look for me. So pretty much, if I used hand signals, so if she looked at me, I could go like this.
Right.
And, if I pointed to her ass or she sat. If I pointed to the bed, she downed. And we lived happily ever after. It's great to have a deaf dog.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, like when you have babies, you wake up and you try and get your morning coffee
Yeah.
before you wake everybody up. You could be up for 3 hours and the dog never knew you were up. So, but, the issue with the deaf dog is you have to, A, make sure the collar's on, and B, you have to make sure that it's charged. Because it did run out of
That
charge.
sounds like you got a story from experience. She's taken off
Twice.
Okay.
I was hiking her in the woods, and the collar died. And she was only no more than 10 feet in front of me, but you can't talk to her. So you keep trying to sneak up, and the more she's keeping walking, and you're trying to, and it just kept going like that felt like forever. And she'd pick the pace up because she's a bird dog, so she's doing her thing, and you're trying to get up there, but you can't call her back. And then when she was a puppy, she got through the fence where the fence hit the house. And again, you can't call her, so you're like, I got a deaf dog running around with no collar on. And thankfully, people up the street saw this little white puppy and stopped and grabbed her. And I'm like, oh, she's mine.
Was there a reason for when you trained her on the collar, you did vibrate instead of stimulation? Is there tit for tat or any reason for it?
I would guess, and now you're going back many years.
Yeah.
And this woman that I went to in New Jersey, she actually had trained dogs for commercials and did things with dogs. And I would venture to guess, could be lack of knowledge, could be preference.
Okay.
Is it's not something I would do now? No. But I predominantly used that just for the recall.
Oh, okay. I didn't. I didn't know there's like a reason for it being deaf. Like they are more in
she
tune with
didn't-
the feeling opposed to.
I don't think that there was. I mean, really, if you think about it, you got a dog that's deaf that's running quite a distance from you out in the woods. The vibration is more intrusive.
Yeah. So it's probably a little more
So that
attention getting.
that could be it.
That could be
Because
it, okay.
you're not patterning it with a verbal.
Right. Gotcha.
So that
Cool.
could be why.
Cool. Well,
Best dog I ever had, by the way.
really, what
deaf
was it?
dog.
What was its name?
Winter, because she was
Winter.
all white.
That's Winter. I had no. See, I learned something today. I had no idea that the color, because they can pick up on them flushing in the woods, is like even a thing.
Well, they're on horseback, so the dogs are like going
Right,
quite
yeah.
a distance. And they're using verbal cues that you probably can't understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So they're off in the distance and they're verbal cueing them with, whoa, here, whatever. But they have to be able to follow the dog because they don't know where the birds are.
Right.
I mean, they know where their certain coveys are located, but you don't know if the bird has left that covey.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to see the dog in the brush, and you can easily see it if it's all white versus big
Yeah.
patches of
That's interesting.
color.
Interesting.
And that's an English pointer versus a German short hair, because a German short hair
Right.
has much more color. But
Yeah.
if you look at the true bird dog is the English pointer.
Yeah.
By far the English pointer. And
The OG.
that's one dog you'll never see as a board and train.
Why is that?
I worked at an animal hospital for 8 years.
Never saw one?
Never had an English
Because
pointer.
we've
come in
had
as
a
pet.
ton of GSPs,
Yeah,
obviously.
but never. Best kept secret right there.
That's funny.
Best kept secret, but you'll never see an English pointer as a pet. They are by far
So you
a
want?
working dog.
Yeah.
Equivalent to a Malinois working,
Mm-hmm.
a bird dog in the field is a hard-working,
Yeah.
true bird dog.
Yeah.
Ask Eric.
Yeah. I will. Yeah.
But you'll never see it as a pet.
Yeah.
Never.
Interesting. That kind of takes you back to like what kind of dogs do you never see at shelters? Like you
Well, listen, I went to a shelter in Georgia once because I had found puppies that were in somebody's like barn, shed, garage, and I took them to the shelter. Like you go to a shelter up here and it's loaded with pits or pit
right.
mixes,
The difference.
loaded with pointers.
Wow.
Loaded with pointers. Nothing but pointers.
It is funny how like depending on where you are at in the country, like,
Geographic.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like pit bull.
So up in Alaska, North Dakota, probably all huskies.
yeah.
up in that area?
I'd imagine. Yeah. But you're never going to see like a full bred like French bulldog or a Labrador or any of these things in shelters.
Well, when they come and go pretty quick.
Right. They're there a day. And before the owner can come back from their vacation and
get
realizes
them, it's already gone.
someone's snatching their dog. Oh, good. So I think that's wrapped it up, Linda. I don't know what else we can talk about. We've beat it to death.
No more questions from Dave?
I don't think so. Dave wanted to know about the working line. I think Dave's pretty. He wanted you to explain to the good folks why the average person shouldn't have a Malinois. If I had to guess based on his wording here.
It's not a pet.
Yeah.
It's just not a pet.
Yeah.
You know, it requires a job and work and an outlet and mental stimulation.
yeah.
And most people have families, jobs to do. And it's just not the dog to throw the ball or go for a 5-mile jog. You have to think outside the box. You have to mentally stimulate it.
Yeah. And we see, like, we've known people, we've trained them for people that, they'll shoot a picture of their dog sitting on the couch and laying whatever. And, those dogs, they're going to do it for so long, but there's a lot of, like, risk involved there. They have that self-satisfactory, want to mouth things.
Which we're at the
intuition.
point now that Zena's self-satisfactory mouthing is Harley.
Yeah, exactly. There's a good point. Like you have a dog that's almost 7 and lived like 5 years seamlessly with another Malinois, and now all of a sudden is trying to kill the other Malinois. Like they change. That's what people don't understand. Like even like with the best person training them and guiding them, and now you have 2 Mallies that, if given the opportunity, will snap on each other, and nothing happened to create that. Right? There was no like, lightning storm one night and one got shot and he thought the other one bit his tail, some crazy shit.
Yeah.
It's just literally, it's one of those things where now you have to keep them accountable and watch them like a
Xena
hawk.
wears a muzzle in the house.
You got to wear a muzzle, and it's just not something that the average person, I would say, needs to sign up for. Not when they're looking for a companion. That should be like low on the list, unless you have like, your kind of mentality and you treat the dogs the way you do and have like, and you hold them accountable. But for the average person, it'd be interesting to see why people have dogs. Wouldn't that be like a funny stat to keep track of? Like, hey, why did you get this dog? Well, I wanted a companion. I wanted something to sleep in. I guarantee you, people will tell you this. Like, I wanted to be able to go to the dock or whatever, or I'm lonely. I want to get into bed with me. We've heard that shit before. Literally, we've heard it. Don't laugh. It's true. Or like, we've had people like their child. What was it? Like their children had moved out and they wanted something to wrestle with. Remember that one? Like, literally.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen some shit.
Yeah, we absolutely have.
It's not like, hey, I watched a YouTube video and I thought this dog could jump really far. Because they're not doing that work with the dog,
Well, we did have that too. We did have somebody say that, I saw the cool videos and wanted it.
Yeah.
So we've gotten that too.
We get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I think that people don't look at their lifestyle. Yeah. They look at the look of the dog. They look at maybe what's available.
Yeah.
Like say somebody says, "Oh, I have a litter of puppies."
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Or, for whatever reason, and I just had this conversation last night with somebody who was talking about a dog, and I'm like, you have to get a dog that matches your lifestyle.
Sure.
If you're going to be working 8 to 5, then get a dog that's requirements are on the lower end.
Right.
So I don't think people think about that. I don't think they think about what fits their lifestyle other than, my friend's dog had puppies and it's so cute.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
And then a year later, they're pawning it off at the animal shelter,
Yeah.
Or they're bringing it to us and saying,
they don't have time for it.
This dog won't listen to me.
Yes.
I can't believe why it won't.
And they're like, I just don't have time for it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, did you think about that when you got it?
Yeah. Every now and then there's like something's happened. Every now and then.
Things happen.
Yeah. They took a job that has more hour requirements or something like that. But, we'll give those people an out. But
what do you think the biggest misconception is?
On dogs in general? Like the time frames it takes?
Dogs and owners.
I'd have to agree with you with not taking a lifestyle. I think that's probably the biggest one.
That and they humanize them.
The humanizing is the worst, yeah.
They want a family member.
Right.
They want somebody that's going to curl up on the sofa with them.
Yeah.
They want to baby them, but they forget it's an animal.
Yeah, if you ask most people, they'd probably say, I want a companion, right? Which that's a human concept. If that's the case. You're like, I don't know, a single guy, for example. I go and get a dog. No, you need like another human to talk to, you know what I mean? Because if you're still working, let's say you're like a single person working a 9 to 5, and you're just lonely, well, shit, you're at work anyway. The dog's getting no benefit there, you assholes. Take that damn thing back to the animal shelter where it's happier, with its fucking friends. But yeah, probably that. Probably the I'd say that's the worst thing you can do for a dog by far, dehumanization. Yeah. But, why they buy them to begin with, of any breed, I don't know, probably loneliness or to fill a void or to replace one.
Yep.
To replace a dog. That's, again.
Some people do that. They lose a dog, they go out and get another one.
They get one immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right with filling a void. Their husband passed away. They're older. They're alone now. The kids left. Yeah. All those things.
I get it if you have the time. People like, hey, I've got time. I'm retired. My grandkids are even. Sure. But then what are you doing with the dog? Like, they say I got this time, and then they bring us a dog. I'm like, all right, well,
and then
you don't need long, but if you, again, our theory in sessions, they need to be short, 10, 15 minutes tops. So you do 4 15-minute sessions. That's 1 hour a day is all we're asking. Oh, I don't know, because I play golf usually around 7, and, the poker games, then why the hell are you buying a dog, dude?
Goldfish.
Yeah.
Goldfish.
Yeah.
Get a goldfish.
Get DraftKings, not a dog. 'Cause that's what you need to be doing. Or a pool table, All right, let's let the music play us out of here. I think we've killed it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. We'll have you again when
Dave's around?
yes, when he's not. Hopefully he's feeding Joy little grapes.
Yes.
With like a little thing right now, like
Cheese
a
and crackers,
Yes.
grapes.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope he's
Foot
at.
massage.
I hope he's at home with Joy right now. If she really didn't have surgery, we gotta delete this fucking interview.
I really hope he's not in the basement watching golf while she's upstairs saying, Dave,
Hit
Dave.
the little button.